Hello, 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 hello. My name is Victor Entry. I'm head of input distribution and agro-dealer development unit at AGRA. I'm your moderator for today's seminar. I'm going to do this with
Chikata
and the president and staff of AGRA, PIATA members and AGRF partners, CEOs and managing directors of agri-businesses, government and public officials in food and agriculture, as well as policymakers, leadership and staff of Ghana Investment Promotion Center, captains of industries and cherished AGRA partners, financial institutions and business advisory service providers, investors in agribusiness and allied sectors, leaders of farmer-based organizations, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on which part of the globe you are located at this point. You are all welcome to this webinar titled is key to ensure food security and the economy depends on agriculture as it employs over 50% of its people, and it is a key contributor to the continent's GDP. The African Green Revolution Forum, AGRF, is considered the world's most impactful forum for African agriculture, pulling together stakeholders in the landscape to take practical actions and share lessons that will help to. It's a platform for global and African leaders to develop actionable plans that will move African agriculture forward. The AGRF Virtual Summit 2020, organized under the leadership of His Excellency President Paul Kagame and the AGRF Partners Group, will be held from September 8 to 11, 2020 in Kigali. The AGRF Virtual Summit 2020 will be attended by more than 4,000 delegates and high-level dignitaries, including current and former heads of state and government, agriculture and finance ministers, central bank governors, eminent leaders of global and regional development institutions, top industry captains from the national, regional, and global private sector, mobile network operators, technology leaders, and agripreneurs, and lead representatives of farm organizations and key non-governmental implementing partners. AGRF 2020 comes at an unprecedented time when African major cities, especially those that mainly rely on imported food, face a looming hunger crisis following the implementation of lockdowns in several countries to contain the spread of COVID-19. It also comes at a time Africa is faced with several other challenges that include climate change, malnutrition, poverty, emergence of pests such as desert locusts and fall armyworms. The theme for AGRF 2020, feed the cities, grow the continent, leveraging urban food markets to achieve sustainable food systems in Africa. It's a call to action to rethink our food systems to deliver resilient, better nourished, and more prosperous outcomes for all. A specific side event at the AGRF will be the Agri-Business Deal Room, a transaction and matchmaking platform that connects investment-ready agricultural value chain companies and projects to financiers, business development services, and ecosystem partners. The primary aim of this matchmaking is to address access to capital, to matching investment opportunities to investors and other financiers. As a prelude to AGRF 2020, AGRA Ghana and partners are organizing this virtual private sector forum on the theme, investing in the private sector to feed the world. Investing in the private sector to feed the world, a Ghana perspective. This forum will provide you the private sector, and other industry players with adequate information and whip up your interest to participate in AGRF 2020 to explore investment and networking opportunities.
We have an engaging and interesting lineup for today's webinar. For the agenda, we have opening remarks by Foster Boateng, Regional Head of West Africa, AGRA. We'll have an overview on benefits of AGRIF 2020 and a deal room by Mrs. Vanessa Adams, Vice President, Partnerships and Piazza, Chief of Party, AGRA. This will be followed by a keynote address on investing in the private sector to feed the world, a Ghana Perspective by Nana Osei-Bonsu, Chief Executive Officer of the Private Enterprises Foundation. A panel discussion would follow this with keynote speakers, Nana Osei-Bonsu, Chief Executive Officer of the Private Enterprises Foundation. We also have on the panel Mr. Yofi Grant, Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, Mr. Seth Chum Akwabwa, CEO of the Association of Ghana Industries, Mr. Kwesi Nyamiche, CEO of Vesta Oil, and Mrs. Grace Enim Yabua, Banking Director of AFSA Ghana, Mr. Zaid Hamoy, National President of Borderless Alliance, Mr. Techis Raha, Senior Agri-Business Specialist, JSL, and Mrs. Mabel Ann Akoto-Kwaju, CEO of Okata Farms and Food Processing. We would also have a panel, we will also have question and answers in which we will take questions and follow up from our audience. For this, we would have answers, and there will also be an opportunity for responses of some of the questions posed by our audiences. We would like to encourage you to put your questions as we go along, and we'll pick them up for the various panelists to answer. Without much ado, we would like to invite Mr. Foster Boateng to deliver his address.
Thank you, everyone, and my cherished panelists and AGRA partners and AGRF partners. For me, this particular AGRF and the team has come at a very important moment when Africa is talking about African continental free trade. Normally, I used to call it African food trade, rather. For me, the team comes in perfectly because we believe that unlocking the potential of the private sector is fundamental to meeting the food demand of Africa's urban dwellers and to also create decent jobs for our teeming unemployed youth. Why am I saying that? Statistics point out to the fact that urban population is expected to increase by 50% between 2019 and 2030. That is from the UN Population Report 2018. And this means that an increase in food demand and greater pressure on natural resources such as land and water are going to be key things that are going to really face the world. Urbanization induces also a diversification in diets with growing consumption in processed food due to emerging middle class with high purchasing power. According to ILO report, 175 million additional jobs will need to be created, including 93 million in rural areas. That is why we see private sector as key in driving this change. On this note, AGRA and its partners this year, AGRF, has chosen a very interesting theme, which reads, Feed the Cities, Grow the Continent, Leveraging Urban Food Markets to Achieve Sustainable Food Systems in Africa. For me, in preparation for these very important world-class forum, AGRA has brought together its partners, to be specific, preparing our private sector people to be able to take advantage of what is going to go on in the deal room. Last year we met at the same time, but Fortunately, we were together, but unfortunately, this time around, we have to do it by virtual. Courtesy to Victor Entry for his coordination prowess, making it very possible. I am very happy to see this August panel, and I believe they are going to make justice to the topic selected for the deal room. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all, and I expect you to stay put and listen to very interesting deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Foster Kwame Boateng, for that intro. I would like to welcome everybody on this to this webinar. The title for this webinar is Investing in the Private Sector to Feed the World, a Ghana Perspective. And then we have, doing the justice for us, all the fantastic ladies and gentlemen who have taken their time to provide the requisite answers to some of the prospective challenges that are going through our minds. So at this point, I would like to invite Nana Osebonsu, who is the CEO of Private Enterprises Federation, who is also a traditional chief with the name Obudiachuo Abrikabonsu, Nkabomhene of the Asante Mampon traditional area, occupant of the silver stool, second to the golden stool. Nana Brebre. Nana, you have the floor. Nana, you might need to unmute yourself.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. What I was saying is good morning to all your beautiful panel members, and Foster and you, Victor, for the invitation and the good work you're doing to clarify the role of the private sector in feeding ourselves in Africa. The issues that you brought on board, our capacity to feed ourselves, much more to feed the world. And the issues is how do we feed ourselves and our world? Because if you look at Africa, the issues are we have a lot of post-harvest losses, much more. We also import almost equivalent of what we lose in post-harvest losses from different sectors, different areas of the world. So to enable us to feed ourselves, we have to review what are the constraints and challenges. What are the issues that we need to do? One of the key points that need to be done is inconsistent policies in the respective African countries. Governments in Africa have taken the mantle of doing almost everything that the private sector should be doing. So the private sector mostly are left on the sidelines, and they make it very difficult for them to marshal their resources also to be able to do what needs to be done. The private sector prevails on consistent policies. The private sector prevails on availability of technical capacities and skill sets and the ennobled financial muscles that will allow them to invest. We all know the kind of risks assigned to agriculture in our environment. So unless we have mitigating avenues to the risk, that exposure, agriculture or private sectors desire to get the requisite funding are not going to materialize. So that high risk nature had to be tamed by availability of risk sharing, availability of guarantees, and availability of real market play that reduces the risk premium that is charged on. The key other element is the scarcity of high yielding seeds. There's no agriculture without seeds. Inadequate high quality seeds is very critical. In some of these jurisdictions, there's not much of a food seed industry. So how do you become a viable agricultural business without a requisite seed provision? and then the different standards for local consumption that we set. In Ghana, you may have export standards, you may have local standards. Why do we have that? We have to have a consistency in the standards. And then the private sector, they have competitive opportunities to invest. So if we're trying to attract private sector to go into agriculture, they must be investing in new production processing technologies. There must be some biotech and other things to attract them to do that. Then the new level of knowledge, genetically modified and functional foods. So the choices private sector has to make is, do we go into agriculture or don't we? And if we go into agriculture, then we have to develop the requisite skills, quality standard, technical competencies. We have to get the assurance scheme and certification system. It's not like Kenya has a different system, Ghana has a different system, so we cannot match the quality controls. Then soil management, sustainable production systems, soil nutrient dynamics, efficiency in fertilizer use, and then how do we address the agro-industrial waste. The key point now going forward is the new generation of the African who is looking for nutritious content of food. It's not the old school where you feed yourself and that's the end, you feel full and that's it. Now everybody wants to build their body, so they're looking at the various nutrient foods. But the absence of all this coupled with poor infrastructure. Now, we have post-harvest losses and we have waste. They're two different things. Post-harvest losses is really conscious farming and farming productivity, which from absence of good storage, good planting methodologies, end up with losses in the agricultural undertaking. But the waste is coming from what God has given us in the ranges, in the forest. In tropical countries, we are endowed with fruits, vegetables, and other things that we have disregarded, not neglected. In Ghana, let me give you an example. We have the economic empowerment to fight poverty, and that one is looking to show the capacity of the vulnerable. But if we were to give them an endowment that will allow them to go to the bushes to pick up these raw, commodities and bring it to be processed, that is going to be included in our food security system. And that angle definitely will enhance what we produce, not only the conscious production things that we do. And one of the areas that we haven't done well is research and development. And why would anybody go into research when they cannot get the proprietary rights at the end of the research? So the development of a plant breeding and biotechnology policy that will allow, give incentives to the researchers and the investors, the private sector, is one way to go. A driven absence of structured market. Africa market, we don't grow on demand. We spread the supply to meet the demand. But everybody knows that before you go to grow, you have to have a market, you have to have a demand. So if it's a demand driven, then we know that, yes, I have a contract of X, and what do I need to meet the contract? The capacity that is going to be based upon today's market or the futures market tomorrow. That allows the value chain to be able to facilitate a hedging analysis that today the price is X. If I invest 20, I can get X plus 1 tomorrow. Then the monitoring mechanism. The commodity exchange that are not prevalent in our environment, they're critical because the food waste and all, if we have commodity exchanges and the infrastructure, the storage facilities and all, we should be able to do a lot of assessment on the customer data. We should be able to look at tomorrow that the volumes would increase in the demand or the supply is declining and all. So the commodity exchange, the warehouse receipt system like the Cocoa Board had perfected are one of the areas of some of these things that we can do. Then the difficult high cost of doing business in Africa. The high cost of doing business is a consequence of the high cost of money. And We don't have the institutional framework that will support government policies in a way that there's a win-win situation to make our private sector more engendered to be able to do what we need to do. The absence of patient capital in our environment. When I say patient capital, we're talking about the long-term pool of funding that is requisite for agriculture investment. In Ghana, everybody's looking at the banking sector funding. That's credit. Agriculture doesn't do well with credit system unless you have a market and you have a long-term credit facility. Then, as I said, the inherent risk in agriculture undertaking for both the farmer and the financier. Who guarantees that? Who provides that? If government creates a policy to say that, okay, in case there's a loss, there's an equity, guarantees for the recovery of some funding, maybe 80% or 70% or 60%, as the case may be. So risk sharing is one of the areas that will influence agricultural investment. Then I mentioned the post-harvest losses already, the proper planting methodologies, management of crop, proper crop harvesting, then the storage facilities, the sorting and grading, and then all the packaging that is requisite to be able to trade. One of the mistakes, few of the mistakes we need to avoid, that we always have uninformed assumptions. Oh, once I grow, there will be a market. Once I create, there will be somebody to take. It doesn't work that way. And then instead of doing a collective action like nucleus farmer agro system, cooperatives and all, most of our smallholder players do it on their own without the requisite tools and understanding of what it takes. We have to, as private sector players in the agricultural spectrum, to look at our biggest market, the consumer. What does the consumer want? What are the things that values that we can create for them? What are the things that we need to do as partners, collaborators? And we learn from existing value chains that have been successful. And then there's one other point. Most of agriculture is undertaken by our women. But the women folk, what kind of equity, what kind of support do we provide them? So now, and the other point is the aging population of agriculture players. We have to be able to take advantage and bring the youth in. The youth can only go in if you entice them with the kind of returns and the kind of attraction that will be equivalent to what they can get elsewhere outside of agriculture. But African Union Commission, the AUC, realizing that Africa is not going anywhere without agriculture, created what we call the Comprehensive Agricultural Development Plan, CADA. That on its terms that requirement. So African Union, creating this opportunity, went on to also create a new African Continental Free Trade Agreement. The CADA will allow us to produce, and the free trade agreement or area would afford us opportunities to trade, because you cannot trade what you don't produce. So looking at the CADA angle to create the enablers, and also to create a product, and the free trade to create the enablers. This is the greatest opportunity since God created Adam for Africa to do what they need to do. Within that free trade, the key elements is rules of origin to allow maximum use of Africa's raw material. If we don't take these rules of origin serious, and we allow that anything that comes to Africa in the bilateral protocol and bilateral agreements can be traded across board, most of our raw materials will be left untapped. If you look at agriculture, it has an umbilical cord with mines. The extractive industry is under the soil, under the land, and the agriculture is on top. So policy between the two sectors, agriculture and extractive industry, should be coherent enough to allow to coexist and make use of the maximum that we can get out of these raw materials. Then after the Continental Free Trade Agreement, the AUC also created another institution which most people don't even know about it, the Pan-African Agriculture Apex Chamber. It was incorporated in Ghana a few months ago after the heads of states and the African Commission Minister of Agriculture had approved it. And consequently, the Private Enterprise Federation of Ghana has been empowered by the AUC to host that secretariat for the next 3 years. This is to drive local agricultural interests across the world in all 55 countries. And this is how we believe if we are able to have the local apex agribusiness chambers and then drill down into the regional agribusiness chambers, that will drive the policy cohesiveness and harness policies across the board for Africa to be able to do what we need to do. Because we are endowed with the resources, we are endowed with the market. So the needed requisite tools, financing and technical skills, through this policy framework, we should be able to do. And if we take about the Ghana example, even the limited rural enterprise program in Ghana, and then the GASIP and the planting for food and jobs and others, these are influencing the growth of agriculture in leaps and bounds, but they're driven by government. And unless that is, government makes a policy, turn over these kind of practices to private sector will be sitting on the sidelines and watching. And there's no sustainability when government is driving it, because as soon as a new government comes in the African climate, there's a change. And we go back to the drawing board and we go back to square one. So for Africa to produce, to feed itself and feed the world, we need government to harness all these policies and allow private sector to play the practical engagement to deliver to the majority of the populace. The Pan-African Agribusiness Chamber, as I said, is to develop the domestic private sector involvement and engagement in the implementation of CAADP at the national levels. That is part of the 3 continental levels of the CAADP, the Africa Free Trade, and the Pan-African Apex Chamber to cascade into the capacity of the private sector to deliver on the agriculture for the citizenry of the continent. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Nana. I think you've nailed it right on the head. So at this point, I'd like to find out from Mr. Yofi Grant, who is the CEO of Ghana Investment Promotion Center, what this outfit is doing or has done that would also lure in a lot of investors to take up all these opportunities laid out by Nana and some of the challenges, how they are also resolving them. Mr. Grant, please unmute yourself and then.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much and a very good morning to you all. Sorry, I earlier on had technical problems. We had a little power cut, so I got kicked off, but I'm grateful to be back. And yes, indeed, I do agree with many of the issues that Nana has raised. And agriculture, maybe a little bit of a historical perspective. Pre-independent Africa, agriculture was definitely a private sector-driven activity. But mainly on the continent, it was subsistence farming. People farmed to feed themselves. And it was very much later in the 20th century that we started seeing cash crops in agriculture. And that's where the real evolution began. And since then, it looks like it has been relegated to a state activity of ensuring that the ecosystem or the architecture or infrastructure of agriculture is met. And that is one of, that's what Nana has captured in detail, that we since then, we've had issues of making agriculture a viable investment opportunity. First of all, along the value chain, there are so many fragmentations. From farm gate to the market, there are logistic issues of transport, haulage, expensive, and probably not accessible, roads not available. There are problems of storage, and so that also needs to be looked at. And then there are also issues of the type of agriculture we have. And it's still taking the continent a bit of a while to migrate from subsistence agriculture to full commercial agriculture. But realizing that there's a huge opportunity, and I say there's a big opportunity because if you look at Ghana, we have 30 million hectares of land that could be used for agriculture, of which a very insignificant fraction is being used and is irrigated. So the potential does exist. And if you look at the African continent, Africa houses over 60% of the remaining arable land for cultivation in the world. So that's a huge opportunity where Africa can actually feed the world going forward, especially post-COVID. But you asked what we are doing at GIPC to support the sector. And for us, our remit is to bring in foreign direct investment, to participate in the economy and create partnerships and linkages for growth and development. And so in that sphere, we have crafted or are further strengthening our investment climate to be able to attract agriculture. Already, we do have an incentive structure for agriculture that exists since they are considered important for Ghana. And we believe that that is important because it's claimed that over 50% of our population are engaged in agriculture somewhere along the value chain. And agriculture at this moment, averaged over the past how many years, has been 20.8% of our total national output. So therefore, it's important that we create the incentive structure for agriculture. And I will probably give you some of those incentives that you may find relevant. But then I'll go further into how to expand the horizons of agriculture, because there's been quite some significant development in the industry over, I'll say the economy, the agricultural economy over the past 3.5 years. For example, there are specific incentives. If you go into tree crops farming, you have a concessionary tax rate of 1% for 10 years from the start of the operation, and then 25% thereafter. Cash crops or farming livestock other than cattle or fish, 1 year for 5 years, and then 25% thereafter. Then, of course, cattle farming, 1% for 10 years, and then 25 years after. And for agro-processing business, you actually have 1% for 5 years, and then 25% after. Income from cocoa, the same, 1% for 5 years from start of operations, then 25% thereafter. And income from rural agriculture and rural banking to support agriculture, 1% for 10 years tax, and then 8% thereafter. So these incentives already do exist, but we believe that there is need to review that and further strengthen the incentive package for agriculture, because prior to, I believe, 2010, agriculture actually attracted a zero rate tax, which made it pretty competitive. And so it was no wonder that we saw a dip in agriculture when these concessionary rates were put on it. But apart from that, there are also locational incentives for agro-processing companies. After the 5-year tax holiday, agro-processing enterprises which use agricultural raw materials as their main inputs shall have a corporate tax rate fixed according to their location. Let me read for you as follows. If you're in Accra, Tema, your tax rate is 20%. If you're in other regional capitals, except the Northern, Upper East, and Upper West regional capitals, your tax rate is 15%. And if you are outside any regional capital, your tax rate is 10%. And then for the Northern, Eastern, Upper East, and Upper West regions, your tax rate is 5%. So I believe that creates a very competitive agricultural attraction purpose. But why still hasn't the private sector really gone big into agriculture? It's a question that has a yes and no answer, because indeed, if you look at Ghanaian agriculture as it is right now, even if you take out cocoa, for which part of the value chain is held by government, the production side is virtually all private sector. So optimally, agriculture in Ghana is still mainly private sector driven. It's just that along the supply chain, the interventions which need to be put in with government have been wanting for a while. I mean, we don't have roads to agric areas, we don't have warehouses, we don't have silos. But in the past few years, there's been a massive effort under the new policy of planting for food and jobs to really trigger and stimulate agriculture. And the results are there for everybody to see. And the government's policy under the planting for food and jobs is to increase farming inputs for farming communities and to ensure that there's pricing, attractive pricing, to also ensure that people see agriculture as a business. Indeed, because agriculture has been a subsistence trade for a long time, it's taken us quite a while to see it as a business. And I did speak to a group of young people quite recently, and I asked them, but why aren't they in farming? And one of them asked me a very interesting question. He asked me, show me one millionaire in agric in Ghana. And I told him there are some, but as we usually say, money doesn't like noise. So those millionaires are there, but they're not going to be trumpeting all over the place. But there are major farms here which are over 50,000 acres that are privately owned. And I can give an example, which I'm not by that advertising it, but if you look at Quenim Farms, they've actually reached 50,000 hectares and are looking to do up to 100,000 farms. If you look at Masamahat Farms in the Volta region doing banana, they could possibly have the single largest banana farm anywhere in the world in the Volta region of Ghana. So we do have it there. And the planting for food and jobs and the interventions in the planting for food and jobs has actually accelerated growth of grain production in Ghana. And for the first time, we are actually exporting 19 cash crops that used to be food crops. So there are interventions that are improving the agricultural scheme. And for the private sector, those initiatives are very important. If you look under the PED program, which most of you know, government facilitated 40 million seedlings which were raised and distributed to over 65,000 farmers, of which of 26% were female. And we do have to say that a strong constituency in agricultural ecosystem are females. And all these seeds were planted in about 70,000 hectares of land. And that is to improve productivity, improve the quality of seeds. But then again, under the Grains and Legumes Development Board, 15 farmer groups have been supported by research and are being helped with seed production to make sure that the private sector can actually generate its own seeds to support the industry. There have been quite a number of other initiatives which, for the purpose of this, it will be difficult to outline them all. But we've seen, under some of these little initiatives, we've seen cocoa production increase from the 27% to 40%. But the intention of government is to now move away from the export of the beans into value addition. And so between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, for example, there is a tacit agreement that in the next few years, we will probably only export 40% of our beans and add value to 60% of our beans. And that is pretty, I think for me, that really it's going to trigger a new, should I say, introduction of real business in agriculture. When we start to add value to our products, I think that is where the private sector will get its biggest opportunity, because people still don't believe that you can actually do a business out of agriculture. Now, that was also born out of financing. The fact that most of the financial institutions saw agriculture as high risk, and therefore in assessing the risk, actually made it difficult to borrow because the rates were extremely high. And we didn't have crop insurance. We didn't have any other form of insurance going to the agricultural sector. So it made it extremely difficult for the farmers. But more recently, there's been micro-agric insurance, which is almost ensuring that the farmers get a fair deal. There is pricing information. There's extension services being provided under the Planting for Food and Jobs. So I can only say that the sector is getting more attractive. And as we go out and we speak to investors, they also ask about the opportunity to do large-scale commercial and mechanized farming, which exists in Ghana. I mean, if you look at what I'd call the Savannah region of Ghana, that is between Kumasi right down to up to the border of Burkina Faso, there are significant land resources for agriculture that could facilitate large mechanized commercial farming, especially in the grain sector. And so the opportunity does exist. And at GIPC, agriculture is going to be one of the areas that we are going to focus on, because we do realize that there is a low-hanging fruit opportunity. And this is a country that majority of the population have been engaged in agriculture.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Grant, for also adding on to what Nana earlier on said. And then, as both of you said, value addition is the way to go. So at this point, we have the key players, the Association of Ghana Industries. That's where most of the private sectors are domiciled. Seth, what is your take on this vis-a-vis the available opportunities out there for investment in agribusiness?
Well, thank you very much, and good morning to the rest of the group. Indeed, happy to be part of this program. Now, as far as agriculture is concerned, it is key to industrial development, and those of us who are working directly with industry, we always talk about how we can improve agriculture in order to improve industrial production and industrial development. The two are very much linked, especially when it comes to agro-processing. And if you look at the food production situation in Ghana, I think there's a gradual improvement. I mean, the fact that 40% of our rice is produced locally and 60% is imported, it's a gradual growth. We are almost self-sufficient in egg production, and in several areas we are doing reasonably well, but we still have a long way to go. If you look at the recent development, the COVID situation, you notice that inflation has gone up a bit between the months of April to July, and it's largely due to increase in prices in the agricultural sector. So the correlation, if you study the inflation figure, the correlation between the food prices and general inflation is very strong. And for that reason, we need to really improve agriculture at all times. The aspect of it that is also critical is the fact that agricultural production actually supplies to the manufacturing sector. And I'm happy that a lot of our companies, a couple of them are now making good use of locally produced products instead of importing. Nestle, for example, is using local maize to produce a Cerelac and all that. Olam is, into cashew production. Avnash is producing rice. The breweries are even using cassava to produce beer and all that. These are all critical inputs for manufacturers. And I think that if we do very well on that score, I think we'll do very well in industrial production as well. But I also appreciate that the interventions that have been made recently by governments in terms of the planting for food and jobs are all yielding some results. But we need to strengthen that aspect very well. And we know that even the agriculture chain itself, the private sector is playing a key role, as Yofi said, when it comes to the planting itself. But the challenge we've had over the period is the fact that the nature of agriculture in Ghana is still very peasant in nature. We don't have the typical big commercial farmers who are producing large volumes and supplying the market. And I believe that has affected industrial production in a big way. We are doing well on the 1D, 1F, but I can imagine that if we had consistent supply, reliable supply in large volumes of agricultural inputs, there will be a lot more factories established even faster than we are doing now. I mean, Blue Skies and the rest, Blue Skies is even still importing some products from Cote d'Ivoire and all that, whereas we can actually grow all this in Ghana. So we need to strengthen that part, and there's the need for a stronger linkage between, say, Ministry of Agri, Ministry of Trade and Industry, to ensure that the two are connecting very well, industry side and the agricultural side. So these are very critical issues. When it comes to the challenges, one major challenge area that we must always be mindful of. And I think that's the driver of this whole thing, is the marketing bit. Nobody, no private sector person will go into a business that he can't be sure of the market. And when there's market uncertainty, you cannot be sure that people would invest so much money in commercial agriculture and all that. So marketing is key. And that's why there's the need for the industry to be properly linked with agriculture, so that we have a lot more agro-processing industries who are actually depending on agricultural produce that we generate in Ghana, so that we create market opportunities. Again, you also mentioned it. If you want the marketing bit to work, then the entire value chain must work very well. The logistics that go along, because sometimes between the farm gate and the market, the cost involved becomes so high that it becomes prohibitive. It becomes disincentive for anybody to do any serious commercial farming, because commercial production of agricultural goods, because it becomes so expensive. So if we're able to reduce that part and encourage people to go into agro processing, it will create a huge market opportunity, which will encourage commercial farming as well. And one area that's discouraging commercial farming is our land tenure system. We've talked about it several times. It is still a major issue. I've had investors who have come to Ghana who are making attempts to go into agriculture. They need large thousands and thousands of acres of land to be able to do typical commercial farming. So the land tenure system has to be resolved somehow. And if you're able to do it, the funding and the rest are critical, but they will come along if you have all these opportunities created. Of course, the funding bit, we know we have a lot more banks, but I remember some time back, we were talking to ADB. Now they've improved a bit. But the entire portfolio, a typical financial institution that was set up exclusively and more directly for agriculture finance, was only doing about 29% of their portfolio in agriculture. Today, I don't know the situation today, but I don't think the picture has changed that significantly. It means that funding for agriculture production and input
I think Seth is having some challenges with the bandwidth. So sorry for that. Mrs. Kujo, Akoto Kujo, you are with the processing sector.
Sorry, I was going to make a point which I hadn't made. If I can quickly just put it in.
Yeah, let's wait for since Seth is through. Let's wait for Seth to complete that. Seth, we lost you somewhere along the line, so please go ahead.
Okay, are you hearing me now?
Yeah.
Great. So I was just talking about the role of AGI or association in this whole development in agribusiness and food production and industry. And I was making a point that we have a very strong agribusiness sector that coordinates activities of companies within the agribusiness chain. And our key role here is to put them together and on their behalf, engage government, engage policymakers to push policies that support agricultural production and industrial development. We advocate on various issues, especially how to help improve the business environment to attract investment into agriculture and industry. And I think we are doing this quite well. We also do another key role that we play is the linkage between industry and agriculture. I've mentioned that already, that if you have industries that are operating well and are actually generating so much volumes to the extent that they rely on local production of agricultural products, then they become a huge market for the agribusiness. In that case, people are encouraged to go into agriculture. And therefore, our role as a linkage between the two, in fact, we have some programs with the European Union and others that we are helping to promote the linkages between agro-processors and then agribusiness. And in the process, we will help achieve the objective that we all have ourselves. So in so many respects, we are working on this. But as I said, the critical thing is that how do we resolve some of the key challenges in the agricultural sector, considering that agriculture is so key, so important for industry and for our development as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So before Mabel, Mr. Grant would like to just chip in something. Just a minute, Mr. Grant.
Yeah, so less than a minute. I was just going to say that very often when we talk of agriculture, we only talk of the crop side, but there's also quite a huge initiative in fishing, as well as livestock. And recently, the government put in place under an AFDB facility some financing for livestock development in Ghana. And if you go to Wawasi, you see that some thousands of hectares have been isolated for livestock farming. And this is under a program called the Rearing for Food and Jobs. And I think we shouldn't lose sight of that. It's it's critical in ensuring food security. And I was going to say that the policies that have come out that resulted in planting for food and jobs is to ensure food security. Food security to feed ourselves and also to form a resource base for our industrialization, as Seth did say. So that we are looking at two types of agriculture, one to feed ourselves and then the commercial side. I believe that because our sector is significantly dominated by smallholder farms, the interventions will be different on both sides. So I just thought I should make that very clear. But then, of course, we've also recently done the Ghana Tree Crop Development Authority to try and regulate and create a conducive environment for growing and development of tree crops and industrial crops in Ghana. For example, cashew, coffee, coconut oil, palm, mango, rubber, shea, and those are very good industrial agricultural bases for the private sector to engage. So I just thought I should make that clear.
Thank you very much for that additional information. Yes, Mrs. Akutokujo, you are more like a hands-on. You are dipping your hands in the industry. You are processing. You are also supporting some farmers. From all these opportunities laid out, what have you done and what do you think the private sector, which you belong to, should do to take up these opportunities that have been lined up by Nana earlier on and follow up with Seth and Mr. Grant?
Thank you, and good morning to the panelists. In fact, financing is killing us in the private sector. For instance, I'm working with over 3,000 smallholder farmers. This year, because of the COVID-19, we are really cash-strapped. Rains are also not coming in our Volta and Uti regions. And if we even want to do irrigation, the cost of fuel is not going to help the smallholder farmers to plant whatever they want to plant at this time. We really want the financial institutions to come over and help the smallholder farmers, and we who are doing large acreage of rice. Because when you look at the rice production in Ghana, the best quality rice comes from these areas, the Volta and the Oti region. But we are not getting investors to come in to help us. We are not getting financial institutions to come in to help us. So we are plowing back whatever we grow into the farm, and that is not helping us. We are not breaking even. We've been farming for over 15, 20 years. There's never been a year that we have broken even. Nana has spoken about it. Research is a key to the private sector. If we don't have researchers who are coming in to do what we are doing, we are all going to suffer and we are not going to get the quality that we want. For instance, this year, seeds did not come for rice. So the farmers are planting their contaminated rice seeds. What this is going to tell us that the quality of the rice that will come out is not going to be the best. And then people will not patronize it and will have to go back to import rice. So from what they've all said, we've understood it. We want more help in the private sector. We need investors in the private sector. I'm into production, I'm into processing, I'm into packaging. I do the best. My quality is the best. But then you don't have the finance to do it. And nobody will even come here where you are to see what you are going through. When we meet on platforms like this, we talk and that is it. At the end of the day, nobody comes to you. So in fact, in this 21st century. Let us do what we have, walk the talk. We should walk the now. We have spoken a lot. We have all the people on the platform today. So I want to see what they are going to do to help the private sector. Thank you.
So well said, Mabel. Nana and Mr. Grant, they want to see your face. They want to see your good faces and then give them some technical directions in terms of the way to go. We also have on the line, I think, Mr. Kwesi Nyamche of Vesta Oil Mills. Kwesi, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Kwesi, please go ahead. You listen to them and then you heard them. What is your take on that? You are also one of the leading processors adding value to soy to produce vegetable oil for the local market. And you were initially trying to hit the export market in Nigeria with your feed. What do you have to say about this in terms of all the opportunities lined up by GRPC and then PEF?
Thank you, Doc. And let me say good morning to all the panelists, especially Nana who is one of the people who has made Vesta what it is right now. And I thank you very much. What I want to say, I've listened to Nana, I've listened to Mr. Grant, and I don't know which is which, because I think Mr. Grant was talking about marketing and people should seek marketing first before maybe we set up industries and stuff like that. Let's go back to the days of sunflower. People planted sunflower seeds, and because there were no industries, the whole project couldn't take off. Now we don't know whether we should set up industries first before the farming comes, or the farming should come before industries. Something to be debated. Policy, I think, like my CEO was saying, policy is key. I am deeply rooted in the industry. Currently, Vesta is the single biggest soybean processor in Ghana. We need raw material. So the food sustainability is key here for us, because once the farmers could produce, we are the off-takers, and then we get the raw material to business. But I could say that for the past 12 years since I've been in this industry, we have never had raw material year-round, which is a problem. This year, fortunately for us, due to planning for food and jobs, there were a lot of raw material in the system for us to have taken advantage of. Unfortunately, we had influx of people buying and export. It was good. I mean, nobody would say don't export. It was very good. People were buying and exporting in drones. Unfortunately for us in the industry, that's why I talk about policy. People who were exporting were not tracked. They were not paying any export duties to anybody. They just take it through Togo everywhere, Tema port, and they export it. There's a policy in Ghana which allows people to bring soya bean meal into the country, which is our product, and they pay no duties. But when we run out of soya and want to bring in soya to process, so that we don't lay our workers off, our factories don't become idle, we pay duty on the raw soya beans. Such policies, needs to be looked at, as Madam was talking about, so that industry, I mean the private sector, get the needed support, the needed boost, to develop, because we are the employers, not people who are importing here and there. So I think we have to look at the policy aspect of it. I don't know if I've answered the question properly.
Yes, you have, Kwesi, and then I think it's something that I'll go back to Mr. Grant and Nana to help us solve it after we've listened to others on the platform. Thank you very much. So, as you question, you said now with planting for food and jobs, you could access some of these beans from northern Ghana and other places. How do we get it down? So, Ziad, your Borderless Alliance, what are you doing? What have you done so far to facilitate that? Because it looks as if logistics is an issue, is an area that we need to seriously look at. So, Ziad, if you could let us know what Borderless Alliance has done and what it intend to do in order to resolve some of these, so that when they produce them, you can facilitate their movement from the north to the south for value addition, and sometimes vice versa. Ziad, please.
Yeah, thank you, Victor. Good morning to you and to all the presenters and listeners. It's a pleasure to be here today. Before I answer your question, let me just step back and pull a bit on some of what my erudite panelists have discussed before to make three statements, very quick ones. The first one, I believe that Ghana can become a regional food basket and an anchor to African food security. I'm very sure of it. We have what it takes. The second statement is that many African countries can actually become a food basket to Africa and an anchor to food security, hence, provided the right elements are in place, and so, hence the element of competitiveness between the various countries to play that role. And lastly, I look at development of Africa from a triangulation of three efforts. One of them is about growing Africa, and that is to improve the manufacturing, the production of the continent itself. The second is by moving Africa, and that is to look at the movement of the goods and the services from one place to another. And that will also include what we at Borderless do, and that is to look at the barriers to the movement of the goods and the transportation of these goods across countries and even within countries. And the third element, which is to trade Africa, and that is to create market linkages between the buyers and the sellers. Hopefully, both of them are within the continent. And that is something which, for example, and that will entitle market linkages, but also finance. So Mr. Yofi will be involved, yourself will be involved with the trade room, with the deal room. And so all of these three efforts will work together to push towards the growth and the thriving of Africa. And I believe that the newly the impending African Continental Free Trade Agreement can play a very important role towards accelerating that. You see, the COVID-19 pandemic has actually a silver lining, and I think Nana has spoken about it, and the AGI has spoken about it, when they said that we have started witnessing more production of local goods, including in agriculture, and more developments are taking place in agriculture in the country. So all of this is taking place and requires the concerted efforts of many partners. Borderless will be playing its role with the trade, with the promoting economic integration and the free movement of goods and people across the West African region. Now, you have asked me a question, and I get back to it, and that has to do with what we have been doing. You see, the situation in West Africa as we speak at the moment has been affected by the disruptions of the value chains, which are especially coming from outside, and also from the movement of goods across West Africa itself. Now, the cargo itself and the movement of trade itself has not been much affected, but the people who are involved in the trade, that is, for example, the cross-border traders, especially the women, the people who are involved in the vehicle that is moving across, have their movements severely hampered. That means now the trade has to abide by the strict regulations that take place and varying regulations that have to do with COVID-19. So some of these situations have to be looked at. And then we haven't even spoken about Nigerian borders, which have been closed from the beginning of this, from August of last year, for various reasons that have to do with the movement of goods that are moving from Benin to its country. So there are so many things. We have been involved in two levels. The first of which in working with the private sector players who have been facing difficulties with the movement of their goods internally through whether by illicit fees that are being charged at illegal borders or checkpoints, or whether some difficulties in crossing borders at cases where there shouldn't be these difficulties, or whether it is where the implementation of the ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme, which allows their products to move within the region freely as long as it fulfills the rules of origin of ECOWAS. So we have been working with people who have been facing difficulties and obstacles with the ETLS. And we have also been working with some of our members who have been finding difficulties in moving their goods within the country, but also within the region. So by leveraging on our extensive regional network and by engaging with the authorities, but also by deploying two of our assets, the first of which is an electronic platform for complaints, for monitoring complaints, that is currently being piloted across Ghana and Burkina Faso. And that has been fronted by the Ghana Shippers Authority from the Ghana side, which is our host institution, and then from the other side in Burkina by the Burkina Shippers Council. And this provides a focal point for first of all, registering complaints, and it's available freely for people who register. Registration is free for private sector representatives. Once you're registered, you just upload your complaints, and then their complaints get followed up in these two countries through the various focal points, and then help is provided either to the economic operators or traders or transporters who are involved. So at the same time, we have been monitoring the state of the borders, the land, the sea and the air borders across West Africa in collaboration with ECOWAS and the RACs. And the situation as it is fluid. So we have been updating our table on the movement of persons of COVID-19, and we have recently launched our third edition as of 1st of August. But then the lockdown situations, the curfews, the land borders, and these are things that continue to shift. And bear in mind that the borders have not completely opened yet within West Africa. There was an attempt by the ECOWAS countries to come up with a gradual plan of reopening the borders in a way that ensures that COVID-19 situation is being kept in check. But we are still, and there has been a protocol that has been developed, a toolkit, so to say, in order to ensure that the various transport modes and the various borders openings will comply with a strict health and safety protocol to prevent the spread of COVID-19. But we are currently at a state where we are waiting for the heads of state to approve such a gradual reopening, and it has delayed a bit. We know that different countries have been implementing their own gradual reopening without coordinating on regional level. So there's been a lot that has been going on, and we have been involved both on the national level in Ghana and on the regional level. But the situation is very fluid as we are speaking. I think one of the main barriers for the movement of goods within West Africa has to do with the uneven implementation of some of the national or the regional regulations. And that has to do with the ability, capacities of these regional bodies and even of some of the national authorities across the region. Eventually, I want to conclude saying that eventually the opportunities are many in Ghana, and we are beginning to reap some good results from our collaborative activities, but more can be done, especially by tackling the competitiveness of the local goods in comparison with our neighboring competitors, even with the international value chain. There's a long way to go. And we have to play our role in ensuring that we produce more, but that we produce it more competitively. And as Borderless Alliance, we can help by looking at the barriers to cross-border trade and the national barriers. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ziad. Before I go on to Grace, because the processor said that they need money, they need cash. I would like to say that you've joined in today's webinar, which is investing in the private sector to feed the world, a Ghana perspective, with a sponsorship from the AGRF partners. This is a prelude to the AGRF, that's the Africa Green Revolution Forum, which is coming up in Kigali next month, September 8 through 11. So this is a prelude to prepare ourselves towards the AGRF deal room, where we're going to have a lot of deals initiated and then closed by private sector, and then we have also government and doing that as well. So Seth, Mr. Ziad talked about the fact that Borders Alliance has this feedback system. I would like to know whether some of your members have benefited from that, and because I know that some of your members are also doing exports through these borders. What is the relationship between AGI and then Borderless Alliance?
Well, thank you. AGI is actually a member of the Borderless Alliance. I personally have been serving on their steering committee. We participated in all the programs that they organize. For us, any opportunity that is available for member companies, we get involved and try and extend this opportunity to them. So indeed, we are aware of the program that Zia talked about, and then we've extended it to our members. The extent to which they are benefiting, I'll probably have to ask a little bit, but I know that it exists. This kind of network and connections are there, and we are taking full advantage of it. When we are participating in the program, we normally circulate information to the companies, and those that are aware or are interested then try to take advantage of it. But I mean, there are other issues that the Borderless Alliance always try to tackle, and we get involved in the advocacy bit because we are also a very strong advocacy organization, especially when it comes to dealing with the borders, ensuring smooth transition of goods between the countries in West Africa and so on.
Okay, thank you. Foster, I know that AGRA is partnering with ECOWAS to welcome some of these challenges. Could you please give us some insight into what has been done so far? Foster, could you please unmute, please? Okay, before then, let me give the opportunity to Grace. We are talking about cash. They want money. Could you please let us know what ABSA is doing and what ABSA has done and how you could support? Because as Mr. Grant said, value addition is key. And Nana earlier on attested to that fact, that that's the way to go. We need to also support research, as Mabel indicated. How are we going to get these things done so that we could all have money in the system so that we can add value to the primary produce? Thank you.
Thank you, Victor, and good afternoon, esteemed panelists, as well as all our viewers and listeners from all over the continent. It's a great opportunity for me and a great privilege to be here. I'm particularly excited, about the Africa Green Revolution Forum and the various initiatives that are being driven through it. I believe that Ghana and Africa can be self-sufficient in all food categories, as well as even net exporters. We've just got that much, arable land. One of the things that I think that we need to think about intentionally, and hopefully from this forum and subsequent engagements, begin to do some more practical steps. And a lot has been done, a lot is happening, but we've got to be able to move from the small scale mindset. Simply because it becomes extremely expensive to operate at that level. I was heartbroken at Auntie Mabel's submission. You're operating 15 years without earning a profit. I mean, that's tough. And yet, Agri is one of the most lucrative areas you can do business in. So small scale is a good place to start, but we've got to move from there, into larger scale. And from the financial sector, I'll speak broadly and then narrow down on a few things. I think we need a lot more collaboration and as bankers, we believe, at least in Absa Bank, we believe that we are enablers. So it's important that we step out of our banking comfort shoes, and have greater collaborative approach. It's one of the reasons why we've identified, and I agree with Nane's submission as well, that plain bank financing just doesn't work for agriculture. We've got to be able to put in place different kinds of funding structures, and you do need patient capital. So the collaborative approach will change how we do agriculture financing. It's why we do things like capacity building for our clients, because from the small scale operations, there's a lot of gaps in terms of, the structures that are in place, the formalization, records keeping, all those things that kind of help you, work with a bank to make some sound financing decisions. And at Absa Bank, we've been intentional about that. Beyond that as well, we go all the way to unsecured financing, because again, the land tenure system and its associated, challenges create hindrances for some of these areas. In terms of agribusiness financing in Ghana, for the last 5 years, I know that the latest data was showing as of 2018 that about total bank funding, only 17.5% was out to agriculture. And even this is a significant growth from prior years, because it was in single digits there. It shows that definitely something is happening. The Planting for Food and Jobs initiative, enrolling over 600,000 smallholder farmers. There's a lot that is happening in that sector. Establishment of institutions like GERSAL to help, de-risk the sector is also making a difference, but we still need to be able to do more, to grow the sector. COVID has shown us, that self-sufficiency is a very, very big conversation, and we need to be intentional about how we fund these things. So financial institutions are contributing in the space of agriculture. For us in Absa, we do have a good track record. I think one of the things that we did also was focus on the input side to help, build the yield or grow the yield, from farms. So we've done a lot of funding support on inputs. We've done a lot in primary, and I have to say also gotten badly burnt. But that hasn't made us stop. We've continued, to invest because we believe in the sector. However, it also has driven our collaboration conversations, because we need the right structures, we need the right framework, because when other funding goes out, it's other people's money and it's got to come back. So if it keeps going out and doesn't come back, you already begin to build a problem. So that's where we are working on. Some of the challenges we've seen, I've talked about the patient capital. Infrastructure is one area where we are also focusing on supporting agricultural infrastructure. So we're supporting some of the feeder roads projects. We're supporting things like machinery, because mechanization also is a huge opportunity. We're supporting some of the irrigation projects, because there are some of the crops that we can have several more iterations of harvests than what we are seeing now if it is not totally weather dependent. So we're driving those things. We're also working with other partners around how we can have the right technology solutions that can get to the grassroots of farmers. Because there is a real challenge at the grassroots level where actual production is done. Then this is from, food crops to cash crops to tree crops. The challenges, cut across a wider range. When you move into tree crops, you're talking longer gestation periods, and therefore, the requirement for even much longer tenured funding. It's the same in the livestock sector. When you look at poultry, poultry has been challenged. I'm looking forward to some of the initiatives that have been announced to help that sector, transform. So a number of areas where we believe there can be more opportunities is for government to support agricultural lenders with a long-term fund, and it can be a partnership arrangement around this. Also, we have to develop storage and processing facilities. That's a big need. When you look at the post-harvest losses, it's such a shame. We need to be able to get better at the processing piece with our capacity. There are other aspects of increased opportunities if our measurement of risk is handled differently. For example, you can't hold stocks as collateral on record, but if some of these regulations were revised, it would also make financing for the sector more accessible. Again, cost of funding, I have to touch on that. I can't have this conversation without talking about the cost of financing in Ghana, and I'll be the first to admit it is very high. And it stifles growth. However, if we are able to put in place the necessary collaborations, we de-risk the sector, and therefore the pricing on bank financing can then be driven down. The other area that will need a lot of work, is around the discipline and integrity of the agricultural community. Once funding is given out, the discipline to ensure that you're doing the needful with it and therefore meeting your repayment obligations, because one man's action has impact on another. It impacts the sector overall. So if the sector begins to show up differently in terms of the discipline around servicing obligations, it also drives down the risk factor. It drives down the cost. So it's important for agri-businesses to prepare to access funding. Record keeping is critical. We still have huge gaps there. And that's why at Absa Bank, we are actually going out of our way and bringing on board entities that work with us to build capacity, of the players or actors in the sector to actually support you in the journey of building the record keeping and the good practices. I've talked about the integrity and also building the business through maturity. We've got to see businesses grow and turn profits. We've got to see wealth creation happening in the agri sector. They exist, but there are very few. We need more and more of millionaires coming from the agri sector. And there's a certain discipline that is required to be able to build sustainable businesses. You want businesses that will cross borders. You want businesses that will cross generations. It requires discipline. We can't do things the way we're doing it 20 years ago and expect that we have access to opportunities that are available today. We've got to also make the decision to change that thing. So I think maybe in summary at this stage, really keen to see what practical steps we can do further. And at Absa Bank, we're keen to be an integral part of that process. We've already demonstrated that with our unsecured financing to the sector, and we're also encouraging all other banks to actually come on board and be part of this, because this is bigger than just Absa Bank Ghana. It's about our nation, it's about Africa. We've got to do this for ourselves. We continue to do the capacity building, and over the next couple of years, we plan to impact a whole lot more in the sector. We're quite aggressive and bullish about how we can change and see some significant growth happening in this sector. Thank you
very much, Grace Elizabeth. So they are also in support by extension that there should be more of the 1D, 1F, because so that they can add value, they can also mop up the raw material base from that. And also there's a need for government to also set up more storage facilities to reduce the post-harvest. Recently, we heard that about 80 or so warehouses have been built already. So there's a need for us to have more of such warehouses so that we could also get some of these businesses invested. Because Absa is ready to invest in businesses. And I'm glad to hear that you are even providing BDS services for farmers or agribusiness stakeholders to have access to funds. So that's a good news. So to Seth and your colleagues, Absa doors are open now. They've been open since, but they keep on opening wider and wider. So you could go there and then get some funds to invest so that we can have more factories throughout the country, and then we could mop up all the raw materials that have been produced. So, Mr. Techisaha, you heard what Grace said, that at the tail of that there's a need for us to de-risk. What is GESA doing so as to facilitate investment? Because risk is an issue. They always say it's a perceived risk. or rare risk, so no matter the angle that you look at it, there's some level of issue. There are some levels of issues that we need to resolve. What is GESA doing, and what have you done so as to resolve some of these issues, so as to enhance development and growth of agribusiness sector in the country? But before Mr. Techi goes on, I would like to encourage you to put up your questions in the chat corner, because the speakers will be given opportunity to respond. If you could also direct the question to the specific speakers, so that it will be easier for them to respond to you. So please, you're encouraged to go to the chat corner and then put up your questions there. Mr. Techisra.
Yeah, thank you very much, Victor. And good morning, fellow panelists, and also the participants. This morning, I think I'm very privileged, and also GESA is very privileged to be part of this discussion. And I will start from the presentation by Nana, Seth, and Mabel, outlining some of the challenges that we know the agribusiness and agricultural sector currently face. And one of the key challenges that has run through the three presentations is the access to finance, especially long-term patient capital, and also the lack of guarantee schemes to provide some sort of comfort to the financial sector. And I think it's in responding to this particular challenge, government in 2019 established GESA as a non-bank financial institution, which is incorporated as a private company with seed capital from the Bank of Ghana and also a facility from the African Development Bank to help boost financing to the agri sector by using risk sharing instrument to provide some comfort to the financial institutions to lend more to agri, so that the sector can produce more to feed the country, industry, and for export. GESA's business model is very simple. Our main clients are the financial institutions. They use their capital to lend to the agriculture and agribusiness sector, and then they can come to us for a cover, which goes up to 70%. And the 70% is more for the more riskier areas, such as primary producers. GESA currently supports almost all the agricultural value chains in the country, including cereal, legumes, horticulture, tree crops, livestock, poultry, etc. And since we started in July, we've signed on 17 financial institutions to the scheme. And out of the 17, 7 of them are actively accessing this our guarantee cover for the loans that they're giving out to the agribusiness sector. And I must say that for the past 1 year, we've received close to 300 million worth of loan applications for guarantee cover. And out of these, about 70 million has been worth of loans has been approved, which has been disbursed to the agribusiness sector. And those that has not been approved may be due to the fact that some of the applications have some technical issues that the financial institutions have to work with the agribusinesses to address. And some of them also, the financial institutions are yet to provide adequate support to be able to enable us access it properly for the cover. And in terms of what the benefit has been within the 1 year of GESA's operation, for those facilities that we approve, some of them we've been able to use the guarantee cover to support the collateral requirement by the bank, which is one. And as Grace indicated, using the facility, we also been able to bring down interest rates in some of the applications that we receive. And I can give examples of some facilities to aggregators who were supplying maize and soya to some processors, where previously the banks were giving them facilities at 31.5%, but using the facility, we've been able to bring it down to 20, and in some cases, 24%. So GESA, within this space of operation, has contributed to access to finance, increasing the amount of credit that has gone into the sector. In terms of challenges, and I think that has been highlighted by the speakers earlier on. But within the 1 year space of our operation, we also found out that aside the challenges that have to do with the agribusiness and also the whole agricultural environment, the financial institutions are also a big challenge in terms of their capacity to be able to appraise and assess agricultural projects. And also the fact that some of them also lack adequate technical information to understand the specific agribusiness value chains, the production cycles, the production risks and mitigation measures. So in addressing this challenge from the financial institution point, we think if you're able to help them appreciate or address some of these challenges, it will also help them to understand the sector very well and to be able to come out with products that will meet the needs of our agribusiness practitioners. So we have a technical assistance facility which AGRA is supporting us with funding and working in collaboration with National Banking College to institute agriculture and agribusiness finance course for staff of the bank to be trained on an annual basis. Every staff of the bank is supposed to go through this training to be able to build the capacity of the financial institutions in this area. And currently, we've developed a 3-module training that is ongoing at the National Banking College. And we think if you're able to build the capacity of the financial sector to understand agriculture, is a step in the direction of also increasing their appetite to lend to the agri sector. And for this year, our strategic focus has also been to support the poultry and the rice sector. And here we are collaborating with the Ministry of Agri, the Agri-Development Bank, and the AGRA Value Chain Fund, OVCF, to support practitioners in this sector. And with respect to poultry, using the guarantee scheme, working with ADB, with funding a poultry value chain project in the Doma area worth about 20 million Ghana cedis, where we have the key practitioners in the sector, hatchery, the producers of the bird, feed producers, and then setting up a processing plant to be able to produce high quality chicken for the local market. And the idea is to help improve reduce the importation of this product as part of our import substitution focus of this scheme. So I would say the scheme has been operating for 1 year, but we are also using it to address some of the problems that our agribusiness practitioners and as well as our financial institutions face lending to agri. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Techisha from GESA. Mr. Kwasi Vesta, are you there, please? Hello? Because I wanted him to also add on to the challenges that members spoke about and how AFSA. Hello, Kwasi? Hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Please, you heard Grace, and then you also listened to Mr. Techisha. You as an actor, how have you benefited from some of these facilities available at GESA vis-a-vis supporting you to access funds? They said they've even been able to drop the interest rate from about 30-ish to 20 to 24. I'm wondering how you've been able to assess that, if there are some challenges to that. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, the interest rate has come down. True. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Kwasi. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
Yes, Kwasi, go ahead.
What I'm saying is, yes, interest rate has come down, which is very good. Like Grace said, interest rate is one of the issues that we always do. If my chief executive will attest to it. Most of the time when we do this barometer assessment of the industries, one of the key concerns of industries in Ghana is the interest rate. Interest rate has been a killer because compared to our neighbors around, Ghana's interest rate is not anything to compare. That aside, Mr. Techi was saying something which is very, very critical, which I think the banks should set up as part of their research and development. Because most of the time you go to a bank and the person dealing with you, the person speaking to you, don't even understand the nature of your business. They don't even know, and they don't care to know. They have a one-size-fits-all approach. That this is how much how we do our business, this is how we lend. And I mean, whatever you are saying is something like a problem to them, and in course of that, you may even not gain any funding from them. We thank government for this 1D1F policy. Yes, those of us who benefited have our interest rates reduced. We hoping that that facility could be extended to more companies to get more funding. And those companies, banks that are supposed to fund us also should do it promptly so that we get money to do our business. But all in all, I think the banking sector had to do some sort of adjustment to get to know the local businesses if they really want to go into agro-business financing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Victor.
Thank you. Nana Osebusu. Nana, you sit at the apex of PEF, which more like a home for all businesses in the private sector. And I know that you are also a board member of GIPC, correct? So from where you sit, vis-a-vis Mr. Grant, I also come to you with that same question. From where you sit, how are we looking at some of these policies so that it will facilitate investment, so as to enable the private sector feed the world? Because the thing is that Mr. Kwasi Vesta spoke about the fact that if you brought in raw beans, you pay duty. And then if you brought in feed, which they produce, which they might not be able to get even adequate raw material to process, you don't pay that. So how is PEF looking at these to support its members, including those in the processing area?
Thank you, Victor. You heard the two, Mabel and Kwasi Nyamcha. These are the practitioners on the ground. and the difficulty, the discriminatory type of assignment of import duties on various materials that come in. What we're looking at is the development of the local front. And if we're going to discriminate against them on the back of having a finished product coming in at least cost, they cannot survive. On the back of the, Hamwe was talking about the CTLS, the local, the ECOWAS protocol. Recently there was an article by Yoki, but I'll leave Yoki to talk about that on the performance of our neighbors so far as the CTLS is concerned. The reality is that it's on a level playing field. What we're doing at the Private Enterprise Federation is looking under the Continental Free Trade to go to Kenya. Let me give you an example. Nigeria is importing milk from the European countries. Kenya and Uganda has tremendous amount of milk. So what we're looking at is chasing Nigeria to dialogue and create a capacity and exchange with Kenya for their milk and Uganda for their milk, and trade Nigerians tropical wheat to Kenya and Uganda. This is increasing Africa trade. Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire are looking to take advantage of their domination in cocoa industry. They want to do chocolate, value addition, various derivatives in that. But we don't have milk. We don't have sugar. So we can go to Kenya and Uganda again for the milk to feed our chocolate industry. We can go to Mauritius for the sugar. And then Ghana can trade the cassava derivatives, HUCF and others, to these respective countries. That is what the Apex institution, the National Pan-African Apex Chamber, is looking to do a dialogue engagement between countries, look at their strengths and what they can trade to the others, and look at their weaknesses, what others can bring in, where the others have competitive advantage. The cost of doing business that I mentioned previously, as both Mr. Straha and Grace indicated, is very high. How can a bank charge a facility of 24%, 20% when it's guaranteed risk sharing up to 70%? Unheard of, unacceptable. Because you see, the absence of a competitive financing scheme is allowing the credit system to dominate in a way that there's no competition. When Kwesi Nyampe gets a private equity funding, it's zero cost to him at the time. At the end of the, when they have grown to the certain points and they exit, they split the results. His business is growing, his cost is lowered, and so he can compete. But when you charge him 20% on the back of guarantee, and that my challenge with the GESL is the keyword L at the end. It's the same thing as NISL. The keyword L is lending. Why only lending? Agricultural financing is not only lending. There are other forms of financing. Why not private equity? Why don't you guarantee private equity? These are some of the things that we think is skewed against the promoters' end. Because if you're providing guarantees to the lending institution, what might be a proprietor? The person who started the process already, the farmer, the Kwesi Nyamches and Mabels. Why don't you guarantee them back? Because they're the ones that started. If they don't come to the table, there's no funding, there's no financing, there's no credit. So the extension should be given also to these kind of players across the other side of the coin. But the key point that I think you should be doing is the government creating the enabling environment for players to do. I heard one of you, I don't remember, that government is building irrigation facilities and all that. Why should government encourage facilities? Government should empower, should create enablers. The private sector, you and I, will take advantage on the back of the incentives to go and do. And your P indicated where there was a zero cost taxes on agriculture funding. Now we bring 1%. What is that 1% going to do? It's preventing somebody from doing what they normally would have done because of the extra cost of the taxes. At the other side of the coin is the FDIs coming in. COVID had leveled the playing field. We should be cognizant of the fact that most of our export markets are dry up. Most of our imports are also going to dry up. So we should look at the local community as to how do we produce for ourselves with the excess grown out. Here we talk about land tenure arrangement. And I think it either was who said that there were investors who are looking for thousands of hectares of land to plant. Ghana has a finite size of land. The inhabitants, the citizenry, they're growing. You cannot compromise tomorrow by giving thousands of acreage to people. You have to understand, when we were young or before we were born, government had taken what we call I forgot what it was. The structure where government would acquire land within the community and state farms and all. These communities are now growing. They are saddled with the fact that they cannot get some of this land. So the communities are now back coming back to their citizenry have grown. So when we're doing about investment to offer opportunities, what we have always said, and Yofe and I have always talked about this, is the fact that we need partnerships. Partnerships from the foreign investors with the technical skills and competencies, with the funding and the technology to come and partner our locals to do. Not to only come and do and reap investment and go, as had happened previously. So what we look at is the opportunity across board for the locals to be able to also, the Kwesi Nyamiches and the others, to link to the rudimentary type of agriculture, to grow them to the level. I happen to know one processor that was in Jirapa in the northern region as a poultry soybean processor. He was looking for soybean. He couldn't find it. We were able to track one just about 30 miles from where he was. Lack of information. We brought him to Brownhafu, looking at the organic fertilizer to take the droppings of the chicken people back to Jirapa, the unsavory sense in the community that was arousing the community's antagonism. But these are things that we have to do. We have to be talking. We're talking about investors, we're talking about the financiers, but the pool of funding to create that long-term funding for agriculture, it has to be created. The APSAs and the others are doing what they can do. It's just refreshing to hear that APSA is providing some kind of technical capacity and expertise to the beneficiaries of their funding. I know about Fidelity that started doing this some years back. The farmer needs help. They have to be linked. They cannot be in isolation. There must be some aggregation of the farmer group to a cooperative. The cooperative can take equity interest process and links the market. So it cannot be one size fits all or one shoe fits all, but there must be some linkages from the farm gate to the market. And the key driver is the policy of government. Government, as Yofi indicated, when we talk about agriculture, we talk about planting. It's not only planting. Ghana doesn't have any livestock industry at all. We don't have a seed industry at all. So how do we influence that kind of creation of these kind of elements that are critical to the well-being of the agricultural industry? So there are things that we can do. And so to me, the point is the matchmaking, the deal room, the linkages, and then the kind of trade-off among private sector Nigeria versus private sector Ghana before we go to the beauty barriers. But it's the top-down that is affecting the efficiency in the agricultural system.
Thank you very much, Nana, for that. So Yofi, in about a minute or two, if you could respond to these issues of this import duty parity.
I'm sorry. Well, it's a very interesting dynamic we have, because I'll tell you why I think so, because I used to be a fund manager of an Agri-SME fund, 30 million Agri-SME fund. And it was so difficult getting deals from Ghana. And whenever people ask me, I said, a lot of our agriculture producers, people in the agricultural value chain, lack capacity, and they never understood. It's even extremely difficult to get a comprehensive business plan from somebody in agriculture because it's never happened. because we don't have commercial mechanized agriculture. So they look at it from the subsistence view. And it's only recently that we are seeing big players look at it as a pure good business. But let me tell you what, I also look at the financial institutions here, and I say they are totally incapable of understanding the agri space. And I'll tell you why. Quite some time back, I had a client when I was in investment banking who was in oil palm. And he had a great business, but he was being funded by his suppliers because he didn't have credit or he didn't have the cash to do that. And although he was making margins that were good, he wanted to expand the business. So he went to a bank and asked to be supported. Did a good plan for him. He went to the bank. The bank said, oh, yeah, we'll support you. We'll do everything possible. Guess what they did? They split the business. They decided to finance the equipment and not working capital for the chap. And he came to me. So I went back to the bank and said, so how do you expect the business to go on? He didn't come because he only wanted equipment. He wanted support to his business. But they just didn't have the capacity to do that. The credit evaluation was poor. The understanding of the business model was poor. So on both sides, it's not just that the value chains are broken, but I think we need to get to a point where we elevate agriculture as a business, as a formal business. And when we get to that point, we understand it. I mean, I can give you parallels that I've given, and people always say, but why should you use those parallels? Ola came to Ghana as a small company. How have they been able to expand so much? Ecom came to Ghana as a small company. How have they been able to expand so much? Because they have business models that they are tried and tested and work. So they are being financed. They grow from $1 million businesses to $1 billion businesses in Ghana. And our farmers keep complaining, our agriculturists keep complaining. And I always tell them, look at your farming as a business. Look at the technical success of a business. But having said that, I would support the banking, the operational side, and go to the financing side, because that is where the problem is. Pricing is totally wrong. And I do agree that if you look at agriculture worldwide, it is heavily subsidized by governments. So that end of the equation needs to be looked at differently. But I also stated that we need to look at agriculture very different. We should look at the subsistence farming differently from how we look at mechanized agricultural farming. One of them is economic and political. The other one is totally domestic. And they have different ways of being viewed at. America will always subsidize its maize farmers, its beef farmers, because they want to make it competitive. Just giving incentives here is not enough. We need to make it successful because people have to eat. We need stuff for our raw materials as well. So we need to understand and support it. And recently, yes, recently, government has said that they're going to support the sugar, the rice, and maize agriculture. And the big question I ask is, okay, so we're going to support, what does that mean? Because you need to look at it strategically. If you're going to go into major rice farming, then you need to build what I call a rice ecosystem and culture. If you're going to do rice, you're going to compare yourself to Vietnam or China. They've had 100 years of rice farming. They have a rice culture. They have about 100 different strains of rice, when to plant, how to plant, who to plant, and all that. And we should be prepared to do that.
Okay,
if you are looking at sugar, just a little bit more. Sugar, we know how the sugar industry is liking it all across the place. Pricing is also a political. If we are going to do our own sugar, then we should be mindful at what price we are landing the sugar here, such that it's not the export and import of sugar that is the business, but it's actually the production and management of the sugar industry in Ghana that is the business.
Thank you very much. And I must also say that, I mean, I'm sure what you're talking about is a couple of years ago, but now in recent times, I know that most of the banks have built their capacity in financing the agribusiness. The USAID FinGap, among others, supported the then Barclays, among other financial institutions, to do that. So yes, it's good. There's more room for improvement. We can do that, but I believe that they've come a long way to do that. But before that, let me call Vanessa Adams.
There's one point I missed again. Nowhere did I hear the impact of the Ghana Commodities Exchange, which is a major player in the sector. Nowhere did I hear it. I don't know whether the banks are even looking at financing them such that they can play a more significant role in it.
Maybe we'll get another opportunity to talk about that. Yes, I think it's a good point. So Vanessa, now we are doing all these towards the Africa Great Evolution Forum, and there's going to be a deal room. You, as the Vice President at AGRA for Strategic Partnership and Chief of Party of PIATA, could you please let us know what we should expect at AGRF from September 8 to 11 if we register to participate?
Thanks for the question, and I've been listening eagerly at the great debate. I appreciate Yofi's challenges, Ziad's complexities, Grace's realities. I'm very, very pleased to be the Obroni represented on this panel today. So, etese and medase wa pio pio pio. So I do want to say, however, a few comments about the latest discussion points before jumping into the deal room, which I think is a very nice segue. You've laid the challenges out very clearly, Yofi. International competitiveness is the name of the game. No matter if you're a Northern Ghana maize grower, a tamale processing soy or processing shea extraction, no matter if you're a cocoa grower in Ghana, you're competing in the end on an international market. And that today is the reality. It's painful, it's extremely difficult, it's unfair, and it's not working the way anybody wants it to. So I fully appreciate the transparency and the asymmetry of the situation. My favorite time was when a few years ago I drove from Bobo Dioulasso in Burkina Faso all the way the cashew road all the way across the cashew processing zones of Ghana, all the way down across the cocoa areas. And you talk about warehousing and you talk about commodity pricing, and now we're also talking about climate change stresses, right? Less and less rain, more volatility. You're talking about pricing in and factoring in the seasonality changes, the reduction in climate dependencies. And we're still talking about rain-fed agriculture. So Victor, I just want to make a plea for our tree planting agenda while we talk about staple crops at the same time and the cash crop synergies with the staple crops. But this is all to say that, and I think many of you, Nana Osebonso, my greetings. I haven't seen you in a long time, so I'm shaking your hand at a distance. But I know we've been through these trade shows, efforts at international promotion in Ghana, many rounds of incentives as well as subsidies of the government to try and create critical mass. And I think this is what we're talking about, Victor, right? If in the end, we can create significant critical mass, and that's where cocoa is actually still ahead of the game in Ghana. We wanted pineapples to get there, we wanted cashews to get there. It came very close in cashews, and then Cote d'Ivoire reared its head again, right? So I think we have to really look at critical mass as well as helping increasing the processing. And I know you've been talking about the quality, gradings and standards, right? And the processing capacity. So this is where all these partnerships that you've all talked about are so essential. And I think we're pushing the envelope, not just with private sector partnerships, but for the government also to partner at a PPP level, right? So within the deal room, there are 4 different tracks. There's the matchmaking for SMEs with investors and financial sector. But you know, it's not a miracle, right? They have to be ready. They have to be online. They're making their pitches happen, making a compelling business case as well described by all of you. That's the starter. But then what happens, right? Then we have the sourcing in Africa. They have to have more contracting opportunities with larger companies. You mentioned a few in this discussion. The top 30 global private sector partners are all participating private sector companies, including those who are well operational effective in Ghana. And then we come to the public sessions, right, where the government of Ghana, as you have discussed, is actually presenting what's the opportunity for growth expansion in all of these sectors and which companies they're also profiling. So we hope that you'll all be supporting and positioning and driving Ghana's competitiveness. Because of course, you're not just competing with your neighbors in West Africa or with Kenya, but you're competing globally with Brazil, with Argentina, with Vietnam, and the AGRF this year is virtual. It's going to be all online and completely open except for the invitation-only sessions. So the Deal Room platform is live on Monday. The AGRF registration is live. You have to go into both, set up your profile. I hope that you're all angel investors at the same time, and you're going to be both investing and seeking investment. Because one of the things that we know for sure is that Ghana can also continue to be a leader in what you've been doing for so many years. And so we know how much angel investment is happening in Ghana. Nobody wants to talk about it, but it's not just diaspora. There are even Ghanaians in Ghana still investing. So we know you can continue to do it, scaling up, lead the way, and do the initial phases to bring in second and third rounds of investment. And that also gives confidence. If the local companies don't invest in Ghana, then how can anyone internationally come and invest as well? So we're very, very, very pleased to have within the broader Green Revolution Forum virtual summit, where there are many working groups, as Ziad mentioned, working on the regional food trade, working on the ministerial policy and reforms which are needed, increasing the visibility of agriculture. And the presidential summit, as you might have heard, will be beyond all of the previous summits. So Ghana laid the groundwork for last year's AGRF, and this virtual AGRF will take us to a whole new platform. So I look forward to seeing you all online, and hopefully very, very soon for some fufu and some okra soup. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. You're always welcome. I'm glad that you haven't forgotten your.
Good to see you online.
Okay, go ahead.
Because you see, when we talk about competition, we disregard state-sponsored competition. And we all have articulated the fact that in our local environment, the governments don't have money to support the enterprises. When you go to, Yofi indicated how the United States government will support the livestock industry, the meat industry, and all. So when they come in, the Kellogg's, Monsanto's, and the others are competing. The local Vesta and Maybell and others don't have any support from the state. They're on their own. So that competition is skewed. And that is the part that we, as a country or as a continent under the free trade area, should be able to find common ground to support these local industries through competitive support in the various countries and trade off between each country's strengths and bring the synergies across. Because unless we do that, the state-sponsored competition will dwarf everything and anything we do, and Africa will be left with becoming, council of goods, instead of a council of production. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So how do you address that?
Excuse me, before I bring in Caroline and Irene, they also have some questions. We want our listeners to also participate. They have some questions that they're going to read out for panelists to also respond. So after that, if there are some minutes, then you will give the opportunity to talk about Ziad, please. Yes, Caroline and Irene.
I'm sorry, if I may interrupt briefly. Unfortunately, I have to leave in the next 2 minutes as I have another conference. I thought it would be just 2 hours.
So we want you to respond to those questions in case you have any, so that we don't lose a few minutes.
Okay.
So, one Finally wants to know how can we incorporate salt production.
Irene, we cannot hear you. Please get closer to the microphone, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay, so EOP, now we want to know how we can incorporate salt production into agribusiness.
Sorry, cannot hear you. Caroline, can you take out the question? This question.
Can you type the question on the chat so that I can read it, please?
Any other question, please?
Can you kindly type the questions on the chat as well so that we can read it?
Okay, whilst she does that, Caroline, do you have some questions there whilst Irene sort out that one?
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Yofi Grant. Somebody is asking, Kwame J. Apianin is asking how salt producers can be supported to standardize their salt for the local market and for exports.
Okay. Okay, I think that's a very interesting opportunity right there, because apart from Senegal, I think the only country that has large natural deposits of salt that can be harvested are Ghana. But once again, it's been a difficult place to work because of land issues. If you know, I'm sure you're all familiar with the Adasongo Lake salt issues that have happened. There's been litigation over the property. There's been litigation over who owns what, all the way down. We used to have a company that was having sea salt here called Pambros. But the opportunity is large, and government has been very proactive supporting private people who come up to it. So I think that there's a need, if you are really interested, you should bring a proposal to us. We actually took a company to Mexico, which is one of the major salt producers here, to see if we can get a partnership in Ghana to export to the sub-region. I mean, Ghana alone can supply Nigeria's whole entire need of 10 million metric tons a year. And I think that can be done from Ghana. But we haven't seen, and that's why I'm saying that we should build capacity for some of these things. I dare say that in all my years of investment banking, I have a confession to make. As business people, we are not aggressive. We are not. We believe we are, but we are not aggressive. We need to build capacity. Somebody needs to pay money, and as a sponsor or an investor or proponent of a project, people need to pay attention to the detail of the plans they make. I have met a very serious business person who doesn't have a plan, and yet he wants to engage a major investor. I'm saying the major investor will not look at you if you don't have a plan that is clearly, you know, it's clear and visible and can be achieved. He can understand your business. It says, if I put in X, this is what it's going to generate, this is what it's going to do. So I can put it in. But if we only speak about stuff and we don't document and write and build business plans, then, you know, we shortchange ourselves because we'll keep talking and never get partnerships that we require. And I think salt is one of those ones where Ghana has a certain strategic advantage that we should play to. So I would ask him to come over, discuss, or if he has a proposal, bring it over. We'll see how we can sharpen it and then look for partnerships to come in, partnerships to enable them or him facilitate his project.
Okay, Mr. Grant, thank you so much. Do we have any more questions out there for any of the panelists, please?
So, Victor, whilst we're waiting, if I can make, okay.
Yeah, there's a question. There's a question.
There's a question for Grace.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a question from Irene as well. Maybe I should answer.
Okay.
She says some foreign investors are interested in investing in the agricultural sector. Is there space for them? There is a lot of space. There is a lot of space for them. This is where my view will depart slightly from Nana Osei-Bonsu's view, who thinks that, well, if we have land, we should be careful about selling to foreign investors. For me, I think I've gone past that argument. I look at what use do we make of our land and what benefit does the country get? Because if we are not selling to investors when there's an opportunity to optimize the land and we hold it and we are not optimizing the land, it's a waste of time and a waste of opportunity. But we can do that with partnerships. I mean, as I speak, I'm negotiating a partnership for a major agri player in the market who's trying to secure some 50,000 hectares to develop his farm. And it's going very well. He couldn't have done it on his own. And I can give you another very small example where a Ghanaian chap who worked in the UK wanted to come back home, and he spoke with his boss. His boss liked him so much and his work ethic. Says, "I have to support you." So he started with $50,000. They set up a farm just outside Kumasi. In 2 years, he had doubled the size of the farm. Now he wanted to register the partnership at GIPC. He couldn't, because the foreign partner was not willing to bring in $200,000, which is required by law for the JV. So, you know, it was at a stalemate. And I said, well, we still have a problem with the law. Let's find a way to do it. So we structured it differently. He actually loaned the money to his Ghanaian partner to expand the farm. Today, they've expanded and they are actually in export only. So the opportunities are there. And as I said, there's 13,000 million hectares of arable land in Ghana. A very small proportion of it is actually irrigated and farmed. We know that we have capital constraints. We know that the banking sector is going to find it difficult to support agriculture. So where do you go? You look for partnerships, foreign direct investment and partnerships.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr.
Yopi, Victor, 1 second, please. Mr. Yopi, that's what I said, and he said you disagree slightly, because my point is partnerships. Do not sell land which is finite to foreign, because we are not the same population when we're 5 million or 9 million, we're now 39. The future generations should not be compromised by selling finite land to. We can have an arrangement where you have a land tenure secured for all purposes and intentions, and have a partnership with the local. That is what we are saying. That should not be a sale of land which we think compromises the opportunities for our future generations. Thank you.
Actually,
so partnership.
To support you though, you can't sell land freehold in Ghana now to a foreigner. Actually, you can lease, and usually it's a 50-year lease renewable to 100-year leases. Even I'll find it very difficult to find freehold land. So, you know, I don't think that situation will apply where you send tracts of land to foreigners. But it's partnership. I
think the point has been made. Partnership, which I know that some years ago, Nana Santehene Otufo also indicated to the chiefs that they should not sell lands, but they should partner prospective investors so that their stool will also have a stake in it. So I think that's what Nana Osebosu and Yofi Grant, you are all coming from. So I think it's a very good thing. It's a word to all stools and skins in the country to know that they don't need to sell out. They need to partner investors so that they can also generate jobs in for their subjects. Yes, Grace, you wanted to respond to some of the questions that have been.
Yes, I'm itching to speak. Thank you for the opportunity. You know, just to say again that collaboration is key across. And to Yofi, I see him moving already, but we are actually partnering GCX, Ghana Commodity Exchange. We're actually the first bank that signed up on the partnership with them. But collaboration, I mean, as bankers, we can't pretend to know the ins and outs of agriculture. And that's why collaboration is key. What we do at Absa Bank is make it a point to understand your business. You know, so that will mean a lot of questions, that will mean a lot of learning, but that's our posture, because if we don't do that, we can't work together to bring the growth that we need. So we are very intentional about the partnership and also about taking the time to understand the business even before we finance. Thank you. I believe there was a question for me as well.
Yes, there's a question for Grace.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah. There's a question from Faustina Boachi. When is there going to be an intentional plan to economically empower women, especially small-scale women farmers?
Faustina, thank you so much for your question, and it is very timely. What I will say to you is watch this space. You saw us launch the Startup Initiative last month. Just watch this space. What we have done is taken time to engage and consult with women entrepreneurs as well as women in the agribusiness sector. There are very, very pertinent peculiar issues, and we will be showing you very soon a solution that will change your business and change your lives. Just watch this space.
I think any more questions? Otherwise, we've run out of time, and then I'll give 1 minute each to each of the panelists. So I will start with Mr. Techis Raha. 1 minute to wrap up.
Yeah, thank you, Victor. I will say that we as GESA, we are ready to collaborate with the financial institution and the agribusiness community to be able to improve the performance of the agri sector to our overall GDP of Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me also invite Grace, your last word.
Thank you so much. And so, as I've just said, and we continue to reiterate, we need to work together to make agriculture great in this nation. At Absa Bank, we're prepared to actually support. We're already doing that, and we are keen, to do more. And I believe that together on this panel as well, a few of the ideas that have come are quite useful. We'll work together to build the ecosystem for agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go to my good friend Ziad. Your last words, please.
Thank you, Victor. I think Ghana has a very good story to share about the role of the private sector in investing in the opportunities in agribusiness and agriculture. We have the challenges, we have the opportunities, and we have the potential. And so we, as Borderless Alliance, we want to focus on helping the private sector to reduce their costs and their delays doing business in Ghana and across West Africa in partnership with our members, our key institutional partners. At the same time, we will continue to focus on engaging with the policymakers on behalf of the private sector to make sure that we together plan for the policies that create a more enabling business and trade environment in Ghana and West Africa. So we thank AGRA for organizing this dialogue. We look forward for collaborating with the agency and with the contributions at the AGRA and also within West Africa in subsequent events. We did for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ziad. You did for us. Mr. Kwesi Nyamche of Vesta Oil Mills, please.
Victor, thank you. What I want to say is it's unfortunate Mr. Grant has left. It's not all the business people in Ghana that are not aggressive. Some of us are more aggressive, but we need the policy direction. We need. Yeah, thank you very much for coming. I'm saying some of the business people in Ghana are aggressive. Not all of us are not aggressive, as you said, but we need policy direction. Government policies should support private sector more than anything, because private sector can thrive on government policies. If government policies are favorable, we will survive. Another one for the banking sector, I think, like Mr. Grant said, the loans that you give to us are insured already because you take collateral, which is sometimes even more than the facility they are giving to you, but they still charge higher interest, which is killing. So the banking sector should look at it critically and make their terms a bit flexible for businesses to thrive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kwesi Nyamche. Mrs. Mabel Akoto Kuju, please, your last verse.
Thank
Mabel?
you.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I would like to appeal to all stakeholders, including GIPC, the banks, to visit us on the farm to get the first sight of the pains we are going through, because we are ready to produce for the food security of the country. We are ready. Me, for instance, I think I can even do about 10,000 acres of rice this year, but still no rain. So I'm appealing to them to visit us and feel what we are going through, and then they will understand better and know how to help us better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mabel. My good friend, person I admire so much, Seth. What are your final words? You've listened to some of your members. Seth, you listened to Kosinyamche and Mabel. What are your final words, please?
Thank you, and I share their concerns, and I appreciate the effort that they are putting in. Indeed, some of them are very aggressive, always pushing and knocking at our doors for the best of arrangement to support their businesses. Let me say that the CFTA has come, and whether we like it or not, it is with us. And it presents opportunities, it presents challenges. But I want to look at it from the positive side, that there's more opportunity as far as CFTA is concerned. However, we can only take advantage of it if we strategize well. And one of the areas we can strategize very well as a country is to look at the agri-business chain. We have a lot of opportunities if we work very hard and work smart at it. So we should have a clear strategy for developing and promoting this. I keep mentioning the fact that there's a need for business linkage between the agriculture and industry. It is so key and so strategic. We need to be able to produce the products in volumes and at the most competitive pricing to make it cheaper when we do the final processing and we are exporting. If we don't get this right, we can't be competitive at the African continental market and support our businesses. So I think all attention should go there, and we should work together as policy makers, as business operators, as business organizations, and figure out the best way to approach this so that we support our businesses to grow. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Yofi Grant, please, CEO of Ghana Investment Promotion Center. Your final words.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. A pretty exciting discourse all over the place. But as we all know, the problem of agriculture is huge. It's huge, huge, huge for Africa. And we need to come with innovation and technology to find solutions that would make it one of the biggest economies on the continent, because that's where the low-hanging fruit are. I believe for us at GIPC, we recognize that as part of government. And I know that government has put a lot of emphasis on agri development. What I will push for is that there is more public engagement in understanding the policies that are there. I think the marketing of the policies has not been optimal. So there are a lot of things happening that a lot of people do not know. I think that this platforms like these will help people to understand the policy direction and understand the opportunity as well. Agriculture is one we can't compromise on, and therefore we need to pay serious attention to it. And if it be that that is where all our incentives and our motivations are, I believe that it will augur well for the African economy in the future.
Thank you very much. As Inakan AJ said, so Nana will be the last speaker, but before then, let me get Mrs. Vanessa Adams, Vice President at AGRA, to speak, and after that, Nana will give us the final one.
Victor, you're holding us all hostage to this amazing webinar, which has gone well over time, but I think that's culturally appropriate because everyone's still online. And this means that the passion is there, the commitment is there, and you can't even get rid of us all. So I want to commend all of you for joining in and for even disagreeing with each other. You're still pushing us, I think, all forward in the right direction. I think that the analogy I want to suggest is that just as Yofi was suggesting that businesses need to plan, so do institutions. Let's have a strategic ag investment plan. The government has laid out in the planting for food and jobs, exporting for food and jobs, and so on. but where the private sector role is in that, and how much is going to be invested where and how do we address these questions systematically and move the needle forward where we see the progress? So I wanted to say that also we're pointing our fingers at the African Continental Free Trade Area, but these agreements are not new. ECOWAS agreements have been in place for how many? Almost 50 years. I think that the WTO trade facilitation agreements came into force already several years ago. Ghana has signed up many times to these regional trade and international trade agreements. So for me, now let's move. Let's benefit from this and make a move. Make Ghana's name continue to be synonymous with progress across the continent and globally. And I want to underscore, by the way, that at least 10 years ago, Ghana was ranked 5th in the world for opportunities for women businesses. And I don't think you've maintained that level, but I know it's possible. So let's also not forget how our sisters are doing business. I think the voice of Mabel was right on. Get our boots dirty. Let's all go to the field and implement, put our hearts and our minds to action. Thank you so much.
Okay, let me now bring in Nana Osebonsu.
Thank you.
CEO, Private Enterprise Federation in Ghana. Nana, your final
Thank you, Victor. You've done a great job, and Vanessa, you guys have handled this tremendously. The key point, as everybody is saying, is partnership and collaboration. Partnership with government in a PPP arrangement, in a policy framework to make consistent policies that affect private sector so they know what to do. Policy to support private sector. Policy to create avenues so private sector can play. Not policy that drives the business itself, that the government takes the business away from private sector. And then between private sector and private sector, the collaboration and partnership is critical. You can't go by alone. You are so small that you can compete. And when we're talking about competition, as I said earlier, the state-sponsored competition, no matter what we do, is there. And our governments cannot fight that. And also, so the private sector should be looking at how do we bring synergies and alliance and collaboration among ourselves to compete within the African continental free trade area. And as I also indicated, that is a plausible, positive environment that is being created. But there are great and very serious vulnerabilities in that arena. And if you don't position yourself well, you're not going to survive. So looking at where we are under the Pan-African Agri-Business Chamber, we're looking at from the competitive advantage, in that arena. So to me, this is the beginning of the engagement. And once we get to the deal room and help these beneficiaries of your by providing the technical assistance.
Okay.
That is very, very important. Thank you very much. I'm grateful and
you're welcome, Nana. Please, attendees, we are very grateful, but the program has not ended yet. This is just the beginning. It's a warm-up to the African Green Revolution Forum, which is coming up on September 8th through 11th. That's next a couple of weeks away. So go to the net and register. Please do register. Go to www.agrf/dealroom, www.agrf/dealroom, and then you can register and to participate. At the deal room, you get opportunity to have access to partners, you have access to finance, you have access to wide spectrum of goodies, which as a business you are looking for. There'll be governments who are also supporting other areas, who are also looking for investment to partner private sector to do that. So please don't miss out. just pick your laptop, your phone, and then dial in AGRF, and then you register. You can also go to the main AGRA portal, www.agra.org, and then you can also, you find it there and you register. Please, let's all meet there on the 8 through 11 September 2020 this year. We are very grateful. Let me take the opportunity to thank all of you, the attendees, especially the panelists as well. Without no particular that Mr. Techisraha, who is a senior business specialist from Gesal, Mrs. Grace Enimiyebu, Director of Business Banking, ABSA Ghana, Mr. Ziad Hamoy, National President of Borderless Alliance, Mr. Kwesi Nyamiche, CEO of Vesta Oil Mills, based in Kuntansi Dodiako in Ashanti region, Mrs. Mabel and Akoto Kuzo, who is the CEO of Okata Farms and Food Processing in Northern in Oti region. We also have Mr. Seth Chumakobwa, who is the CEO of Association of Ghana Industries. And we have Mr. Yofi Grant, CEO, Ghana Investment Promotion Center. And then Nana Osei Bonsu, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Private Enterprises Federation, who is also a traditional chief with the name Obudi Atuo Abrika Bonsu, in Kabom Hine of the Asante Mampon traditional area, an occupant of the silver stool, second to the golden stool of the Ashanti region. We thank you so much. We are very grateful. Deep down our hearts, we say thank you. And attendees, you've done marvelously well to stay on. We are very grateful. We hope to see you very soon. Please, if you have any feedback, send it to our hotline and we'll also respond to you. Thank you so much. We are very grateful. See you.
Thank you.
And we thank also the regional manager, Mr. Foster Boate. And the Caroline Chikata and then Irene Kuyo for supporting us in all this. Thank you so much.